Alright, so basically today I am just discussing my depression and how I cope with it, which I don't actually. Um, so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. So basically, it all started when I was about, I would say, 10 years old, roughly. Back in 2007, my father had passed away, and it took a pretty big toll on me. I still have a really hard time letting go of some things that I have of his, more of his ashes. I've kept them for almost 11 years now. And it took me almost 3 of those 11 years to actually get them. I had to beg my mother for them for years, for 3 years, because she wanted to let them go. She wanted them out of the house. She didn't want anybody dwelling on the fact of keeping them, and I had a hard time. Um, I like to consider him my best friend because that was my best friend. We did everything together. We always did activities and we were always involved with each other's lives. We were just so close, and it was a great feeling. So anyway, when I was 10 years old, I believe I had just turned 10 in October. So he wasn't there for my adolescence, which really took a toll on me also. So when I was 10 years old, I woke up one morning and I heard a really, really, really loud snoring. And this will all tie into each other, just so you're knowing. Basically, this is just talking about how I feel and um, how I don't cope with it, and I really should. I'm really sorry about my camera, too. Anyway, I was 10 years old, and I woke up one morning, and I heard a very, very loud snoring, a snoring that was just very unusual. I was, immediately, I was like, something's not right. So, I walk into my mom and dad's room, and I'm like, Mommy, that snoring doesn't sound right. And she goes, yeah, I know, it's very unusual. I said, well, maybe we should call the ambulance. Maybe there's something wrong. Well, my mother, who wasn't all for, like, immediate, like, it's dangerous, something's wrong, just blew it off and was like, fine. Um, just get to school. So I was in second grade, treated, like any other day. My brother and I walked home, walked to school, and uh, we get to lunch, and the day's playing out pretty well, thinking of whatever. So we get to lunch, and after lunch we get back to our class, and 25 roughly minutes later, I get called down to the office, and I'm being released out of school. I got to go home early. I'm like, well, we don't have a doctor's appointment or anything going on. Why are we being taken out early? Well, my grandmother was there. My mother was there. My mother was crying. And in my head, I already knew, like, Daddy's gone. Well, I didn't say that. I waited for that whole thing being said. I'm really sorry if I get emotional. So, my mom looked at me and my brother, and she said, your father passed away. Now, when I was younger, I didn't know why he passed away. I didn't know what was going on. I was very unsure because, 10 years old, you don't really know these things, but I'll get to that. So my mother tells me that my father passed away, and I couldn't cry, I couldn't scream, I couldn't react. I just put my head down on the seat, and I just shook my head a million times, and I'm like, I knew it, Now, I am 21 years old. We're talking of almost 11 years ago. March 13th will be the 11th year anniversary that he passed away. And I'm 10 years old, and I can't react. And I knew what was going, I knew that it happened. I knew that he had died. And I blame myself, because I told my mother to call the ambulance. And she didn't. And I don't blame her, because she didn't think of anything was going on. But me knowing that I knew something was wrong, I didn't go to a phone. I didn't dial 911. I didn't let someone know that there was something wrong with my father. So I'm 21, and to this day, 11 years later, almost 11 years later, I still blame myself for him passing, because I didn't take immediate reaction and call someone and tell them, like, I need someone to come check out my father. There is something wrong. Well, my mother doesn't put that blame on me, but puts it on herself, because she felt like she didn't help him enough. As years went on, I found out he was struggling with drugs. As I got older, I got more of the story. So I'm going to give the breakdown for that also. So back in 2006, roughly, back in August 2006, I remember my mom telling me that I remember being in a car accident. I was a car accident. I broke my tibia, fibula, and femur. My ankle got stuck underneath the car seat. Like, I was in the back seat, and I told my mom that an accident was going to happen, and she told me, no, get back in your seat. Everything's going to be okay. I said, no, we're going to do an accident. I unbuckled my seatbelt. I tried removing myself. My foot was stuck underneath the passenger seat, and it's going to sound really horrible, but my foot twisted all the way around in a 360-degree angle. It broke. We ended up doing a 360, hitting a pole, and luckily, I'm glad I moved, because the police officer and EMT said that if I didn't move, I would have died. Mom still doesn't know how I predicted it to this day. I don't even know how I predicted it. I just remember saying it. Anyway, my dad was struggling with cocaine at that point, and of course, I didn't know. Apparently, it was going on for years. Again, I was 6 years old, and he died when I was 10. I had no idea until I was about 13 years old when the story was revealed to me. So my dad was struggling with cocaine. He just was working with the limo company, and it happens. My mom told me that a lot of people, when they have to drive long hours, truckers, limo drivers, anything that involves overnight, they get involved with drugs to stay awake. It happens. You just, gotta be strong enough to say no. But he was struggling with cocaine for a while. And he attempted to get clean, but, it fell back or whatever. So later on, he was like telling my mom when the car accident, like, we gotta get there, we have to get picked up. My brother was with him, and he was like, oh, pick us up, we gotta. He was like rushing her, and she was just all over the place. Now, again, she blames herself for my accident. The officers blamed her for the accident, the EMTs, everything. Of course, being a child, you look at the sources that are around you as of the parent. You ever see those movies, like weird bruises on kids' arms? They immediately go to the parents and be like, is everything okay at home? Or, whatever, in that sorts. And, when my mom told them that I predicted the accident, they asked her if it was intentional, that if she wanted to hurt me, if she wanted to kill me, if her intentions were of harming her child were there. And of course, it wasn't. And I tell her every day that it was never her fault. And I remember one time I told her how I felt like it was my fault for my father passing. And she said to me, Cass, like you told me that it was never my fault for your accident, it's never going to be your fault for your daddy's death. But I don't believe it, and I somehow feel like she doesn't believe that it's not her fault either, and you just kind of put it in the back of your mind. So, life moved on. Well, flash forward back to my father's passing. So my mom started struggling with depression, and she became an alcoholic. And it was very hard. My mom met this very douchey guy named Paul, and they dated on and off for, God, at least 4 years, and we moved to Florida. And this is only a span of like 4 or 5 months that this all happened, of my dad's passing. He passed, she found a new boyfriend. We moved to Florida. It was really hard. My brother struggled also with this, and he resorted to a lot of outside sources of substances, and I just watched my family fall apart. Like, it wasn't like immediate that he like went to go use drugs, and he was 12 though. When my dad died, he was 8 and a half roughly. And we lived in Florida from the time I was about 10 years old to 18. So I had my whole like adolescent years in a state that is horrible, mind you. And I didn't make good choices myself, but I'll get to that. So, Mom became an alcoholic for 7 years straight and dated this really horrible guy. We moved all over Florida for years. Went to St. Augustine. We went to Lake Wales. I don't know if anybody knows where it's near. It's near like Winter Haven, like 45 minutes out from Winter Haven. Vero Beach. We went back to St. Augustine. I jumped school to school to school. And I think that took a lot too. I didn't really have much of a social life. I wasn't able to make long-term friends. So that took a lot also. But when we moved, my brother was bullied. I was bullied. Which I can't really say that took a lot out of me. It was more of my dad not being there throughout my years, and not being able to hear his voice, and not being able to hear how did your day go, and not being able to hear, let's go do something. It was more go to school, watch your mother drink, watch your mother and her boyfriend fight. It was horrible. And I know people struggle with more things in their life. I know there's a lot worse in life, but talking about this makes me feel a little bit better. And it may not be like, oh, I have the worst life ever, oh God, F my life, F this. But I have to say, I have thought about ending my life. There have been different occasions where I found myself thinking about suicide more often than usual, and it resurfaces. I mean, when I moved, I was just so upset, and I didn't really think about depression at that point because, you're 10 years old and you don't really think about that stuff. You're just like, why am I sad all the time? Like, what's going on? And I couldn't talk to my mom about it, I felt like. She struggled with depression for years, but it really started to surface after my father passing. And I noticed it. I noticed, just not even with the drinking, just her actions and not wanting to get out of the bed and whatever. But I didn't know why I was feeling this also. And I never went to seek any type of help at that point. I went to help for different reasons when I was younger. But my dad always pulled me out because he's like, this is going to traumatize her. She's too young to go to therapy. Her surgeries and her car accident aren't going to affect her life. And he was right. They didn't. They absolutely made me feel like a stronger person. I didn't let it hold me back. I was so young. I didn't care. I didn't care that I couldn't walk. I still wanted to get up and run, just go. So he was right. That didn't affect my life, one bit. And it still doesn't. But I never got help after he passed away. I never seeked it. I never asked my mom. My mom never even implied it. She just kind of thought, she's young. I guess, she's young. She'll be okay. But I feel like after you reach maybe 5 or 6 years old, it becomes your impression years. You start to remember a lot more than usual. And I was talking to my mom one day. I was, talking to her about past things. And I was bringing up something that happened when I was about 1 year old. She said to me, she goes, "You're not as broken as you think you are. Because if you can remember something that early on in your life, you didn't need the help you thought you did." Which I didn't necessarily disagree with, but I had to disagree because, yeah, I did remember something very early on in life. And sure, that didn't take a toll on me. But later on in life, there was a certain point on where something did take a toll on me, and it wasn't really put forth in discussion. We kept his death very quiet. We didn't really talk about it as a family. It was kind of like it happened and that was it. And as we, got older, we started talking about it more because when we found out what was going on. But, in between, he was getting help and all this. And I remember he was just getting clean, and this was the night that he passed away. Actually, he was going to get clean, and he's getting clean. He was doing so good. We moved back into the house, and the story that I was told was one of my great uncles had given him medication that he had just got weaned off of from being sick. And you know that when someone used to struggle with abuse, substance abuse, and they go to the hospital, it's supposed to be on record that they used to struggle with a substance abuse, and it can kill them if they use any type of narcotic, and a high dosage or even a low dosage, it can kill them. And he was already weaned off, and I was told that my great uncle had given him something that he already had been weaned off of, and it was in a high dose, and it killed him that night. He OD'd. Well, my brother actually brought up a really good point. So that night that he passed away, he had like a little Game Boy Advance or whatever it was, or I don't remember exactly. I just remember being like a little gaming thing. And my brother actually just discussed this with me just this past summer when he came to visit from Florida. And we were talking about it because I wanted to bring it up. I could see that he misses him, and he didn't really have like time with him. They didn't really like click when he was younger. My brother was more like my mother, and I was more like my father. And excuse me. And there's a lot more to the story, but I don't really want to get into all of it. It's very upsetting. But he gave him that gaming system that night, and he said, "Greg, I want you to have this." And wasn't there for it. I mean, I probably was. I just wasn't there paying attention. But he told me, he said, "Cassie, he gave me something the night he passed away. And I don't want to tell you this, but I think it was a suicide. I think he was just so unhappy that he felt like he had to go." And I was like, "So you're insinuating that he made himself overdose?" And he said, "Yeah." And, why wouldn't he? If someone has been struggling with abuse, substance abuse for that long, and they just felt like they couldn't get out of it no matter how hard they try, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they just take the easy way out? And now that I think about it more, and I don't want to believe it because I want to make sure, like I want to tell myself that my uncle was just a horrible piece of shit, and he did it. But my brother is very wise, and he really looks at this bigger picture, and he's not exactly in denial. And I kind of believe it. I kind of came to the conclusion that he was just so upset with life and that he couldn't get himself to a point of being clean again, that he just wanted to just leave. And thinking about that really hurts, because I just had a realization, and I'm going to get to it. It's very selfish. Now, recently, in the past, I have thought about suicide because of just how unhappy I was about moving and dealing with like a whole new family, basically. And there was no abuse involved. Like, my brother and I were not abused in any way. We weren't neglected. There was food on the table. We were fed, but it was just like there was no emotional bond within anything. My mother didn't talk. She locked herself in her room and she like would drink and cry for hours. My brother and I would stay in our own area. We would go out with our friends and hang out. We just whatever. There was still structure. Like, my mom wanted us home at a certain time. There was still structure, but there wasn't emotional bonding. We didn't talk as a family. We didn't go through. We didn't do anything. And it was hard to just watch my mother spiral so badly. But I thought about depression a few times. I thought about suicide a few times. And the first time I really thought about it was when I held a razor up to my arm. And I made 3 slits in my arm. And I just remember how good it felt to watch myself bleed. I just remember how great it felt to see myself wallow in pain. And, I was 13 at this point. It could have been wanting attention, but I don't really know, actually. It's very hazy to this day. And like in middle school, everybody was like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm cut myself, I want to die. I didn't really tell anyone, though. I always wore sweatshirts, and even it was in Florida. God, it was like 90 degrees, and I was wearing sweatshirts, and nobody really thought anything of it. My mom was always like, why are you wearing a sweatshirt? She didn't even think about it, I was like, oh, I'm comfortable. It was because I was harming myself. I didn't want anybody seeing it. And I remember one time I had to dress up for PE, and I just was like, I don't want to take this sweatshirt off. So I didn't. I just put my basketball shorts on and went out. My teacher, one of my coaches, forced me to take the sweatshirt off. And she saw my arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't send me to anyone. She didn't send me to a counselor. She didn't do anything. She looked directly at it, looked at me and said, go run a mile. And then you can do what you want. Which I can't really say I didn't hate then, because I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I was like, cool. She didn't say anything. She don't fucking care, Well, now I'm 21, and I'm like, why didn't she say anything? Why didn't she, realize there was something wrong? Why didn't she go off and tell a counselor or the principal or a dean or something? We had deans in middle school in Florida. It's just how it works. The deans take care of everything, not the point. But why didn't she do something? Did she realize that harming yourself looked like a trend, back then? Was that like a thing? Well, whatever. Life moved on. I let him heal. Another time I found myself was after my uncle passed away. My mom and I got into a really big fight. She started drinking a little bit again. It didn't really ease too much, but it was starting to kind of die down. Went from how many beers a day to this how many beers a day. I don't really remember exactly. Well, my uncle passed, and of course it's my mom's brother. He also died of an OD, and just kind of felt like, why is everybody doing this? Why is everybody taking their life from drugs? Like, why is this a problem? And I don't know. I never really got the full story on it. To be honest with you, I didn't really want to know the full story because I had to really deal with my father and the story of what was going on with him, and it hurt. So why do I want to hear another one? So I just kind of left it. I heard increments of like story here and there. I just kind of tune it out. It hurts a lot. But I remember my mom and I got into a fight. She was drunk, and she just gets so mean when she's drunk. And I was joking around with her, and I said something, and I'm not gonna say what I said because it's very mean, but I was joking around. You know, we had a different type of like mother-daughter relationship. We like, it was more like a friend as life went on. But I said something, and it got to a point so bad that she said that I'll never get anywhere in life, and I'm always gonna be the way I am because I can't move on. And that hurt, you know, hearing that from your own mother. I went upstairs, and I was crying and upset, and I just felt so lonely. My grandmother, I could hear my grandmother yelling at my mother and saying, you don't talk to your kid like that, and, you know, I will call child services on you. You're not in your right state of mind. They got into a big fight, and I just closed my ears, and I just sat there crying my eyes out. And I looked at the closet, and there was a rope that we had been playing with, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I backed out. I got the rope up, and I, you know, made the noose, and I couldn't do it. As much as I still think about it, I can't do it. And something's telling me that life is gonna get better, that things in life are gonna get better, and the future is brighter. And I have accomplished so much in 11 years. I stopped cutting. I'm going back to school. I actually care about school. My mother got better. She remarried. She is doing so well. But my brother moved away, and that really took a lot. I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional, but this is really hard. My brother moved away back in February because, again, he couldn't take it anymore. My mom was on his ass about stop smoking pot and trying to make him a better person. He wasn't really caring about school, you know, he just kind of gave up. And I remember one day I asked him a question, and I said, you know, are you fucking around with cocaine? He looked me right in the eye and he said no. And I said, I'm gonna ask you one more time, are you fucking around with cocaine? Because I could tell that his attitude and his mood was changing. And he said, I do it at parties, it's a party drug. And I looked directly at him and I said, do you know why Daddy passed away? And he said, yeah. He said, because of coke. Do you want to be just like him? Do you want to throw your life away and throw everything you have away just because of one fucking drug that ruined your life? I said, I'm just not happy. And I said, and do you think he was? He quit his really good job to go somewhere else because of better money. Now, mind you, my father was working in a landfill. It sucks because you have to work in all types of weather, but fuck that. You get benefits, you get decent pay, you have so many things, like your whole family and you get benefits, and he dropped it all to do limousine driving because of this much money and this much tips and whatever the fucking traveling. He lost all his benefits. Why was that worth it? Why was that worth it to throw away all of that, knowing that, you know, you were happy and you threw it away because you wanted to fucking drive a limo. You know, and I may sound really angry at him, and I can't say that I'm not, because he was such a great guy, and the potential that he had was just out there, and he threw it all away for a job that paid well. And I said to my brother, why are you doing this? What is the purpose? He said, I don't know. It's just a party drug. I had to walk away. Now, he moved away because, again, my mother was just trying to get control of him. And, sorry, let me reposition myself. I'm on a laptop, so my mother was trying to get control of him and wanted to see him do good. He wanted out. He didn't want to be controlled anymore. He didn't want to be told what to do. He was, oh God, turning 8, I'm trying to think, he's 19, that was February. He was just turning 19, and, yeah, he had his 19th birthday in Florida, but, he just, like, seemed like he didn't care about ruining his life, and, you know, that really bothered me, because that would be another person I would lose in my life to drugs. And I can't tell myself that I'm going to be okay if I ever lose my brother. Just, like, I survived, and I'm surviving with my father not being here. It's very hard, but my brother, if he goes, I can't say that I'm ever going to be okay. But, anyway, so I tried taking my life when I was 13, and again when I was 16, and most recently again when I was 21. Last year, around this time, I started dating someone, and he's an amazing guy. He really is. He helped me stop smoking pot. He helped me get motivation a little bit. He helped me do a lot of things I couldn't do. And he is just incredible. And Saturday will be our 1 year, and I couldn't be happier with him. More recently, there was a lot of things that were going on with me, and I think I was channeling them on him, and